So how did everybody's predictions turn out?
Right, we look forward and we look in the rearview mirror. Time to check it out. I'm Vickie.
And I'm Jim, and we're with the Bishop team, your leading realtors here in Orange County, California.
Let's see how everyone did.
I'm excited for 2023 because I haven't been in a market for so many years where it's going to be a normal market. We're not going to have to compete with 90.
We're going for normalcy?
Normalcy, can you stand it?
All right, the crystal ball is
The
saying
crystal
normalcy.
ball. People think the rates are high. My first house I bought back in, I think, the late 80s was over 8%.
Yes.
Your first house was probably a lot more. We have other agents that thought it was a deal at 18%.
Yes.
So really, a rate is a rate. You should buy at any time and refinance later.
That's right.
And just look at your payment. There's so many different programs out there. Don't get focused on this rate. Look at your payment on what you want to pay, and there's a program out there where we can get you in.
So normalcy, I like that.
Normalcy is the word for 2023, normalcy.
Okay, so that was a year ago with Wayne Woodyard, our regional vice president for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices, and his prediction for 2023. Now that 2023 is done, how did he do?
So his desire for normalcy, his prediction of that, didn't turn out completely accurate. It was a little bit more balanced, wasn't as lopsided towards the sellers in 2023, but still very low inventory, which definitely helped in the seller's favor. His point about focusing on your payment, not the interest rate, for those who took that advice, it paid off for them, and our buyers were able to get into some great properties because of that.
That's always a great piece of advice. Don't focus on the interest rate. You can refinance later, right? So great piece of advice from Wayne, our regional vice president.
I think it's going to be stable. I think we'll probably see a positive return for the stock market, at least for the full year. I think real estate's going to stabilize. Once these interest rates stop going up and we get a kind of a handle on that, I think everything's going to be just fine. As people need to absorb, hey, we're back to real interest rates like the olden days.
Reality, normalcy.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Those were some great words from a certified financial planner, Mark DiDominico. How did he do in retrospect, Jim?
So he made a couple of points. The housing market and the stock market, he thought would both kind of stabilize. The stock market, although it did dip initially, it did go back up about 16% on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And housing did stabilize as well after the dip in pricing from the interest rate hike. Prices rebound, and we had an appreciation for Orange County in the 13% range. And so Mark was pretty well spot on.
Perfect. Next.
I think if you look back in history, almost any time, and say you have the opportunity to buy a home, you would have done it looking back in history.
Right.
If you give it a long enough time horizon. And that's the great thing about a house is you're probably gonna live there for a while, unless it's something you're not telling us.
We just heard some wise words from Dan Shay, our in-house lender for Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. What do you think, Jim?
Again, Dan was spot on. He tracks the financial markets and interest rates and loans and all of that very closely. And his words of wisdom at the beginning of the year was, hey, if you can buy a house, buy a house. And for those who did, it turned out to be a good deal. So thank you to Dan for sharing his wisdom on all things relative to loans and buying homes.
Right, and he's always available for a chit chat if you want to talk.
I think a lot of this has to do with interest rates, right?
Yes.
So I think once we see those interest rates kind of, right now they've been hiking up and going down, and there's a little bit of, question with buyers about whether or not they're going to have a good interest rate, right?
Where it's going to stabilize.
Exactly, and I think
land.
once we get down to, my prediction is we're going to see interest rates maybe at 5%, and we're going to start seeing the market normalize. And obviously, that'll maybe start with home sellers maybe readjusting their price to more of a realistic price point.
We just heard a few little tidbits from Gina Sanders, our vice president for Orange County Berkshire Hathaway. Jim?
Gina, like a lot of people, were wrong about interest rates.
Oh.
She had thought they were going to go down to 5%, which would have been great. We actually saw interest rates go up to 8%. Towards the end of the year, we've fortunately gone back down to about 6.6. So net interest rates went from 6.4 to 6.6. in the last year. That's about a 4% rise, not a drop to 5%. So maybe next year.
Maybe, hopefully.
They were supposed to be slow in the first quarter of the year, but I really think that there's going to be build-up buyer pent-up demand because every open house we've had 15 to 20 sets of people through, and there's a lot of buyers out there that are not pulling the trigger yet. But I think that first quarter is going to be better than what people think and are projected.
Words of wisdom from our colleague Kevin Hill in the Mission Viejo office of Berkshire Hathaway. How did he do?
Well, Kevin's prediction that we'd have a real hot Q1, kind of like we did in 2022. So while there was good demand relative to supply, the overall number of homes that sold was low, but that was the case through the whole year.
In the first quarter, things will continue to be slow. In the second quarter, as interest rates continue to fall because of the economic conditions and the Fed's response typically to a recession is to reduce interest rates. So I believe interest rates will come back down, which will improve affordability and improve the market in general.
Diane Montgomery has a wealth of information. She is our manager for Berkshire Hathaway Home Services here in Laguna Niguel and also the Mission Viejo office. How did she do?
Well, she definitely got the first quarter right. It was slow. Like other people, she thought that interest rates might be coming down in Q2. They did not. There wasn't a recession. So even though the economy was slowing down, because inflation rates stayed high, the Fed kept interest rates high to squash that. And then finally, towards Q4, we did see interest rates come down. So really never had that pickup that she was anticipating. But she got a lot of that right.
Maybe we'll see that in 2024.
Stay tuned for 2024 predictions on our next video.
My crystal ball says that 2023 is probably going to be a little slow in the beginning, but end really strong.
So Toby had her crystal ball out, and she is with California Title and has been with them a number of years and has quite a bit of knowledge. How did she do?
Well, she got the first part right for sure, that things were slow. And her second part was that we would finish strong. She was accurate about that. Relative to 2022, we are seeing actually more sales and more homes in escrow year over year. Historically, it's still slow, but we'll give her an A on that one.
Sweet. Nice crystal ball.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to have a few more bumps here for the first couple of quarters. Reading things that they say the inventory is going to pick up in the second quarter, and which would be great. It'd be more like a normal market, springtime market. But I think it is going to be a little bit difficult before it gets better. But you know, I did hear something the other day. They talked about the transfer of wealth from the baby boomers like me to their kids. And they came up with a figure like $75 billion in the next 15 years. So, I mean, there's a lot of strong factors.
So we just heard from Dean Stalter. He's a broker of record for all of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services from Santa Barbara down to the border in California. How did he do?
Well, he said that he thought there were going to be more bumps the first couple of quarters. That definitely was the case. The one thing that didn't come true was inventory rising. If you look at, for example, South Orange County, we started the year at 800 homes for sale, and it went up only 36 homes at the peak. So we never saw that rise in inventory, and so that kept a damper on the market. So while you can't always predict the future, working with professionals like us can really help you navigate things as they move and change throughout the year. There isn't a straight line, whether it's up, down, or sideways, and that's what we're here for, is help you get over those bumps, as Dean mentioned.
That's right. And everybody always wants the crystal ball. I'm telling you, we love to bring it into appointments, and sometimes it just shatters. But that's what everyone thought 2023 was going to look like. Now it's in the rearview mirror, and we're moving on to 2024. We'll look at our predictions. Make sure to like and subscribe. You'll see what the 2024 predictions are. I'm Vickie.
And I'm Jim. And we're with the Bishop team, your leading realtors here in Orange County, California.
Let's go.